Welcome everyone. This is Jim of XQ in English, and it has been some time since I did a video that was placed on YouTube. To begin with, I have not been slacking off and have been very hard at work moving the site to the new URL. And during the process, I've pondered on several things that I want to do with my website. One of them is to include a section on material for children. Now, I'm very honored to have permission by International Master Zhao Yifan to translate his video into English, where he shares his insights in teaching children. A little bit about Master Zhao Yifan. He's one of Taiwan's brightest prospects, and according to the unique ranking system that is used in Taiwan, Master Zhao Yifan is ranked as 8th Dan. There's only one 9th Dan player in Taiwan, and that is Grandmaster Wu Guilin. Other notable 8th Dan players include Liu Guohua, Ma Zhongwei, Jiang Zhonghao, etc. And some of them have defeated the Grandmasters from China, and not on several occasions. Master Zhao Yifan is a professional Xiangqi player, and he's also a coach, and he has extensive experience in teaching children. One of his best results in international tournament was in 2018 in the foreigners division for the Xiangqi Cup. Now, the Xiangqi Cup is one of the premier events in Xiangqi. It's an annual event that was held to commemorate Grandmaster Yang Guanglin. In that year, if I remember correctly, the winner of the foreigners division was Grandmaster Cao Yanlei. So there's no doubt about Master Zhao Yifan's strength. Another highlight of his career was in 2017, where he played 1 versus 26 in a simultaneous blindfold exhibition match. He obtained a very respectable 15 win, 3 loss and 8 draw record. But unfortunately, the simultaneous match, the exhibition match, was not included in the Guinness World Records because they did not apply. But nevertheless, it was quite a tremendous and impressive feat in my humble opinion. Now, in his video, this is the exact PowerPoint that he gave me. The first page was a summary of the direction or the things that he felt that children must learn. He outlined the things that he felt that children should need to know and when they learn Xiangqi, and he divided them into several categories and various factors or points or areas to consider in evaluating the position of the board. But that is not the only stuff to it. There are many more lessons that he learned, and he was very kind to share it with the world. So without further ado, let us go into what he had to share. Okay, so to begin with, what can we learn from playing Xiangqi? One of the most common skills that we can learn would be how to make the correct decision. And when you make the wrong decision, how you can, if the game is still going on, how you can try to steel yourself and to adjust your psyche and a strategy and continue fighting. And if the game was over, we can learn through post-mortem analysis on how to improve ourselves and go away from the game or come away from the game as a better person with a stronger skilled player. And in fact, the Grandmaster noted that Xiangqi has many philosophies that are compatible to life and that can be applied. And I am very grateful for him to mention this, because most of the websites or most of the articles or most of the videos you see, a lot of them are concerned almost mainly with the technical aspects of Xiangqi, which is okay, but somehow I personally feel that the cultural, the social, economic, the historical aspects of Xiangqi were not covered well enough. And Master Chao noted that the stronger a player was, the more he could relate to life, and the more that he could apply the principles in Xiangqi to become a better person. So after many years of teaching, Master Zhao Yifan felt that when playing Xiangqi, there are only three things to do. One is to observe the situation on the board. The second would be to make a plan based on your observations, and the third thing to do would be to execute the plan that was made. Now he went into a little bit more detail, and as for the observation part of what to do, Master Zhao Yifan felt that in children this was exceptionally important, because if done correctly, it could help children to focus better and slowly develop their eye for details. And this is something this is a life skill that cannot be overstated. But in order to do so, in Xiangqi, this is done by teaching the children to appreciate the material left on the board, the strength, how many pieces there are, the quality of the pieces, or what they can do, the position where the pieces are placed as an individual piece, and the situation as a whole. Now, children should also be taught to appreciate the fact that the piece placed on a point, or when there are two pieces, such as two chariots on the line, the effects or the potential is much different. And other areas that he mentioned briefly were: is the piece protected? Were tactical combinations present or possible? Were the flanks protected, etc. In his video, he did not elaborate further, but chose to tell his viewers that all this will be covered in minute detail in his upcoming video tutorials teaching Xiangqi. Another important lesson that children need to learn and to appreciate will be the scope of each individual piece, and to understand where a particular piece can move in a particular situation. And if a piece were able to move, what abilities or what can the piece do? Now, the point number 4 here, I think, in my personal opinion, is quite a revolutionary idea in trying to learn Xiangqi, because in all my 30 years, I've never seen anything presented by Master Chao, anything like that he will present that I will go over afterwards. And after going through the 4 points over here, after observing the 4 points, one could decide if he had an advantage or disadvantage in the situation. And based on all these factors, a plan can be slowly strung up. Now, as for learning how to plan, Master Zhao Yifan mentioned that people adept at planning would have a better visualization of the entire situation and very acute judgment. They would also have a very keen sense of the situation, and if these traits could be applied to real life, it would be very beneficial for anybody. Now, when formulating a plan, one of the first questions that come to mind will be: would you want to attack or would you want to defend? Now, usually, if you have the advantage, it will be better for you to attack, and vice versa. That is, if you are at a disadvantage, it might be better for you to try to defend. And Master Zhao Yifan feels that these two basic concepts should be taught to children. Now, of course, trying to attack when you're placed in a disadvantaged position, try to salvage the situation in a do or die situation. It's also a very commonly used tactic, but this he felt that were a little bit too deep for children. And another very important concept would be to identify the problems that existed on the board and try to find solutions to solve these problems. And in his past videos, as he mentioned again, usually the thinking process or the process of formulating a plan would be to consider the king first. If the enemy king can be checkmated, or if your own king is under a heavy attack. And the second one will be if the king is safe or irrelevant, then are there any enemy pieces that can be targeted for capture? If no enemy pieces can be targeted, would it be important for you to start defending yourself or attack the pawns? And were there any major weaknesses in the enemy's defense? Now, these 2 points were especially stressed, but Master Chao mentioned that when trying to formulate a plan, the order could be swapped for defense and pawn. And if all things still were equal, the last idea would be to try to weaken the enemy's position. Now, these 5 factors he has repeated over and over again in his lessons that are already on YouTube. And after a plan is formed, it will be time to execute it. Now, the phase of executing a plan in Xiangqi can teach children to cultivate professionalism and to teach them to become decisive and to go ahead, and even if they might have qualms or unsure. So this is a very important life skill that Xiangqi can teach children. Now, I would like to take a little bit of time to explain this paragraph here. I personally think it's a very novel concept in teaching children. Master Zhao Yifan teaches his students that for each piece there are 17 things that every piece can do. So the first would be to capture enemy material. The second would be to chase enemy material, or to control important intersections, to protect other friendly pieces, to pin enemy material, to take aim, usually with the cannon, by placing it in the suitable line, to block enemy pieces, to use the tactic clearance, or the clearance tactic, which by definition would be to move, which by definition includes, say, like 2 pieces in the same line. The piece in front would get in the way of the piece at the rear. So with the clearance tactic, the piece in front is moved away, and the potential of the attack by the piece at the rear will become a threat to the enemy. He noted that he placed the word mobile in brackets for several of the tactics. For several of the characteristics placed here, because he wanted to explain or to remind the viewer that these situations were sometimes mobile. So other capabilities of the individual pieces include creating cannon mounts, dismantling the enemy's cannon mount, so that the cannon would not be a threat, to use a piece as a decoy, or to sacrifice friendly pieces getting in the way, which is a little bit different from clearance. And also, if an enemy piece was threatening your material, moving it to safety. Another important capability of of the piece would be to use it to attack weak sectors on the board, and also place ambush, or simply make use of the concept of an idle move to place the enemy in zugzwang. Also, a move can be played early as a prophylactic move. Now, there are 17 things that were mentioned here. Now, the reason why I think this is quite a novel concept in teaching children is because when we get to the tactical combinations, you can explain to children, let's say in this manner. For example, if you wanted to trap an enemy piece, the first thing you do would be to use a piece to block the enemy piece such that it remains in the same area or same point on the board. Then another piece will be used to capture the material and perhaps using some of the other capabilities mentioned here. So in actual fact, trapping an enemy piece will be a block followed by capturing. And this concept can also be used to explain discovered attacks, whereby the clearance tactic is used, and where the piece in front is moved away and the piece at the rear would say develop a check, or it will become a simultaneous attack on two of the enemy pieces. So this is quite a novel concept in my humble opinion, and I think I will use it to teach my children, and maybe I'll share with more people over in the articles on my website. Now, after mentioning the three important factors and what to do and how to analyze, Master Zhao Yifan went back to the syllabus content. This is a rough syllabus that he uses. For very new beginners, he would teach the children how to recognize the pieces, the peculiarities on the chessboard, and then of course how to move each individual piece, the notation used for recording the moves, and also the floating value of the pieces, and the principles of some very simple principles in the opening. Of course, basic skills are very important, as mentioned in my article on the website, and he also listed 5 goals that children should learn and apply when doing or playing Xiangqi. And what stood out in his presentation was the fact that he placed a lot of emphasis on children learning how to observe. So, on how to observe the situation on the board. He would teach the children where danger might lie, say which intersection was protected by the enemy, such that if you move any friendly piece there, it will be captured. He also stresses the importance of capturing material, but during the process of capturing enemy material, you have to consider the safety of your king. Whether it will, by doing so, will this be a sacrifice by the enemy? And the status of a piece on the board, is it under attack, or is it going to be captured, or can it do more, or is it an important link in the enemy's defense? So he kept on stressing the importance of teaching children to identify all these factors and to observe the situation on the board. And after some practice, he would teach the children very simple basic kills. For example, the elbow horse checkmate, the pell corner horse checkmate, the double chariots checkmate, the iron bolt checkmate, etc. And by teaching the children these skills, he would explain and exemplify the ideas of capturing material, like decoy, clearance tactics. And after the basic skills are covered, the fundamentals are covered, he would teach the children very, very basic pawn endgames. Instead of doing all the endgames available in the endgame tabia, he would choose or select several he would choose several basic endgame situations. For example, the endgame situation of a pawn versus a king, a horse versus an advisor, etc. And in the pawn versus a king, he would teach the children the importance of making idle moves. In a horse versus advisor, he would teach the children the importance of making prophylactic moves or to control where the enemy king or advisors can move. And for example, in more specific endgame situations like a cannon pawn with a full guard versus an enemy with a full guard, but with the advisors arranged as ram pawn advisors, Master Zhao Yifan explained that he would teach the children the steps to winning, the steps that will lead to a win. For example, of moving the king first, retreating the pawn, retreating the cannon, etc., etc. And then these technical details will be left on this video. So there should be 17 different abilities as mentioned in the previous slide. So this is a typo, sorry. And Master Zhao Yifan felt that after learning all this, it would be the time would be right to teach the children very basic tactics. One thing that he questioned was whether it was relevant to teach children opening principles, because he's found that throughout his career as a teacher, although a lot of people would place a lot of emphasis in the opening, Master Zhao Yifan felt that it might not necessarily be to the benefit of the child. He felt that teaching the opening principles was sufficient, but teaching actual opening tabiat for the children was not so ideal, because children would, he was more concerned about the mid-game and end-game phase of in play, and as long as the children know the basic principles mentioned here, they will do okay in the opening, according to his observations when teaching children. So this is quite a novel idea, and I personally agree with him, because the opening, although it's very important, more important would be the ability of the child to think for himself and to make the relevant, or to create or formulate a strategy for play. And all these are included in the curriculum. So after teaching the first round, he would teach the same thing over again, all over again. But this time he would approach the same. For example, if he mentioned in his video, if he taught a child the elbow horse checkmate, in the next second round, instead of a one move kill, he would change it to a 3-move kill, and instead of only one variation, he would teach the child 3 or 4 more variations, or 2 or 3 more variations depending on the content. So he called this a forward spiral approach, whereby the children would be, whereby the lessons would be repeated, but with increasing difficulty in depth, breadth, and sometimes he would also demonstrate how the experts do it. So I think this is a very proactive approach to teaching children, and one that would really encourage children to learn Xiangqi. In his final slide, Master Zhao Yifan discussed the actual process of teaching children. He mentioned that if and only when a child is really interested, can he teach really very well. If the child was forced by his parents to learn, sometimes it would not be so good. And when teaching children, he will try to be very jovial and try to talk in the child's language. And the content will be presented just now in the previous few slides. But one of his biggest headaches when teaching children was the individual character or temperament of each children. So he would try his best to actively balance the different temperaments of several students in his class as best as possible. And he would accompany the children when practicing the positions or questions that he provided, so that they could learn some of the skills that he wanted them to learn. And he will encourage children to play against each other, the children in the same class to play against each other, and also to play against himself. And of course there will be post-mortem analysis. Now I would like to take a little time to mention this section. Master Zhao Yifan had a very innovative way of teaching the children when he plays against them. He would tell the children that there were 3 levels of difficulties when playing against him. One would be super hard, one would be hard, and one would be easy. And he based this concept on arcade games, whereby there were bosses at the end of there were bosses and mini bosses. So he would let the children choose for themselves if they wanted to play against a very top form boss or a simple mini boss. So of course the difficulty level will be different, but he claims that by doing so, the children would not feel that he was giving them a chance. Instead, they would try to see how they would fare. And according to him, most children would actually choose the one with the lowest difficulty. So he will allow them to capture his pieces, but teach them various lessons along the way. For those children who wanted to play the middle level of difficulty, he would teach them other things. And for those children who wanted to see how an expert player played, he would also do so accordingly. So it would be quite a nice exposure, and in my opinion, it's quite an innovative way of teaching the children. And as for games played by the experts or by the grandmasters, he said that he seldom used them in his when teaching the children, because he felt that the children would not be able to appreciate the matches played, but instead he would choose to focus on the fundamentals, the very fundamentals that were mentioned in the previous few slides. So this will be the last slide, and about the Webmaster has translated about most of his comments. So I think that Master Zhao has really some very nice experience in teaching kids, and in the process of doing so, I am personally very impressed by the fact that he was willing to share his experiences in teaching the other children. I do not know how Xiangqi education for children is like in the rest of the world, because from what my good friend Sergej Korchitskij has told me in Belarus, they are having syllabuses and teaching the children in more or less quite a traditional way that I heard. So maybe Master Zhao Yifan's advice or experience could provide some new inspiration for Xiangqi teachers teaching children in the world. So again, I would like to thank Master Zhao Yifan for him willing to share the contents of his hard work with me, and I hope to be able to do more about whatever work that he has done, to do more translations. So as for the site, I'm still moving it and trying my best to add new content. And I've been correcting a lot of mistakes and a lot of typos, etc., hoping to make it a better site. So I thank you for your viewership, and I hope to be able to make more videos and to be able to upload more good stuff in the near future. Thank you.